What are your most awkward stories that turned awesome? Story 1. Back when I had short hair, a cop pulled over my father for running a red light on our way to a UA basketball game and asked why he ran a red light. My father replied, "I didn't see it." The cop asked where we were headed, and my dad replies that we're going to the basketball game. I, meanwhile, was sitting in the backseat of the car reading my novel. The cop says exactly this. "Well, since your little girl is being so good and quiet reading back there, I'll let you go." I told the cop, "Excuse me, I'm a boy. Do you see any breasts on this chest or long flowing luxurious hair on my head?" The cop blushed the brightest red I've ever seen a man blush and said, "I am so sorry." And he took out his wallet, pulled out a $50 bill and gave it to me. You lucky so-and-so. Just because he mistook you for a girl, he gave you $50. I would not care if someone thought I was a boy. If I got $50 out of it, I'd be like... Well, actually, no. I would really play it up. I'd be like, "No, I'm a girl." Get really upset, start crying, cause an absolute scene. Then hopefully I'd get $100. But, I mean, it's not really that much of a big deal. But to get $50, jealous. Story 2. My best mate invited his close childhood friend along to the beach with me and my girlfriend. They secretly had been crushing on each other for years, unbeknownst to me and each other. Long story short, I was taking pictures of them at sunset and jokingly told them to kiss. They did. That night they spilled their guts to each other and now they've been dating for 4 months with plans to marry. I have a beautiful shot of their first kiss on my computer. Story 3. Midway through my first year at college, I took my recently dumped friend with me to a party. She ended up getting trashed and slobbering all over this random dude who was almost as trashed. Being the good friend I am, I help her to the porch so she can puke her guts out. Then the random dude comes up and starts going on about how much he liked her, to make sure I get her home okay, etc. I get my friend back to her place and she breaks down, telling me she didn't like the guy at all. I felt bad because the guy seemed like a fairly classy dude, but what can you do? The next fall, my roommates invite a bunch of people over to chill, and one of the guys looks familiar. Before he leaves, I ask, "This is a weird question, but were you at a party at last winter?" He replies, "Yeah." At the same time, we both realised who the other person was and instantly became best friends, right through the rest of college. Long story short, my drunk friend hooked up with a random dude. 6 months later, I re-met the dude and we became best friends. But did your friend get mad about that? Because, I mean, sometimes they do, don't they? If your friend has, like, history with someone, the last thing they want is their friends to be involved with them in any way. So I can imagine your friend was a bit angry that you made best friends with this bloke. Or was it just like a one-time hookup thing and there was no history behind it? Like, what was it? If you're listening, let me know in the comments, please, because I really want to know. Guys, do you know what I mean by that, though? Like, have you ever made friends with someone who one of your best friends has got with, like, previously, and they've been really unhappy and angry about it? Because it's happened to me. So I'm sure you know what I mean, gang. Story 4. One of my best guy friends and I were hanging out at a bar with friends. We'd slept together once before, but we weren't officially dating. It was getting late, and he said he was disappointed he would have to leave because he had work the next morning. Mildly drunk, I said, "Why don't you tell your boss that your girlfriend got you sick or something?" Pause. "Oops." To which he replied, "My girlfriend?" He smiled. "My girlfriend?" I thought about it, smiled back. "Yeah, your girlfriend." Then we kissed, went back to his place, he called in sick the next morning, and we had brunch at what is to this day still our favourite special brunch spot. Engaged and cohabiting 4 beautiful years later. Oh, okay, this one is cool. I like this one. I think, guys, right, if you're ever scared to ask someone to be your boyfriend or girlfriend, just do it this way. Slip it in and see what they say. Not in that way. I mean, if you go, "Yeah, I mean, what does your girlfriend think about that?" Or like, "What does your boyfriend think about that?" It's just the best way because, I mean, they'll either be like, "I don't have a boyfriend," or they'll be like, "Oh, I see what's happening here." And then it's done. There's none of that anxiety about asking the big question, is there? Story 5. I recently finished a humanities class that's basically just community service. We have monthly meetings, and the last month I was asked to be the keynote speaker at our end of the year banquet. I'm not a very confident public speaker. I tend to get the shakes, but I figured I would have no problem giving a speech to 50 or so of my peers. So I accepted the honour, not quite realising what I'd gotten myself into. I wrote a short speech a few weeks in advance and showed up a half hour before the actual ceremony began. During socialising hour and realising immediately that I'd made an enormous mistake, The hall was packed with more than 400 students, parents, and staff. Even the college president was in attendance. To make it worse, I hadn't gotten the memo that it was a formal event. I was wearing jeans, slides, and the obnoxiously bright orange shirt that they'd handed out to all the seniors in the class. I went weak-kneed as soon as I walked in the door. With 15 minutes until the start of the ceremony, I took off to the local Walmart to buy a shirt and a razor. I proceeded to shave in the Walmart restroom with the limp-ass faucets that only dribble out of a couple of teaspoons of water at one time. It took me nearly 10 minutes to eradicate my neck beard, and by the time I showed up, the ceremonies had already begun. I walked on stage with a glass of water and a razor-burnt face to recount my most recent dilemma as my icebreaker. The room burst into side-splitting laughter, and I was able to walk off the stage with my dignity mostly intact. Ooh, that is tough. Now I feel you here, hun. I used to love public speaking, right? It was my favorite thing to do ever. I was the most confident, outgoing person you could ever imagine, right? It was like my forte. But now, since I've grown up, I couldn't think of anything worse than doing that. Like, that is probably now one of my worst fears. Like, how do things switch? I don't know. Maybe it was an age thing. But I'm so glad it worked out well for you. That's the best ending. Story 6. So there was this creepy guy who was a friend of a friend of a friend. He was not exactly invited to large group gatherings, but not turned away either because he was known through church, blah, blah, blah. Well, he was constantly trying to put the moves on me, and the guy I was starting to date sat next to me. He caught on to my help me vibe and held my hand and kissed me. Discouraged, Mr. Creepy says, "Wait, are you seriously dating this guy?" I turn to him. "You down?" He shrugs. "Yeah, I'm down." He walks away fuming. A few months later, we're actually very happily exclusive. He again, but less forcibly, is putting the moves on a bit during a pool party. My love machine scoops me up and sneakily moves my favourite ring to my left hand while our backs were turned. He proudly and quietly announces we're engaged. Mr. Creepy again sulks away not to be seen for some time. We've been together since, and we were truly engaged 5 months later. Story 7. I was working as a cashier in a local hardware store. You placed orders in the back, and they were coded with your name and came up to the one register we had open. Someone with a kind of generic name, John Brown, said they had an order from the back. I rang that up first, not thinking about it, and then the 100-ish plumbing pieces he had. I tell him the total, and it's thousands more than he expected. I tell him I pulled up his name and repeat his name to him. He says, "Yep, that is me." So I start saying that is his order, when the guy behind him interrupts and introduces himself with the same name. While I'm ringing everything up again, they made plans for a barbecue and he was going to help him with the work at his new house. They became friends and I had to spend another 30 minutes ringing everything up again. Story 8. When I was a young guy, I worked in this restaurant where I also was dating the banquet manager. One day, I come into the office, where my girlfriend was complaining to this guy about what a poo I was being. I deserved it. I was in my early 20s and a bit wild, but I knew I was being a poo, so I wasn't mad at anyone. His back was to me, and he was totally hitting on her, while also telling her she deserved better. She did. She went white, and he realised that something was up. He turns around and sees me, and I give him the steely look, but inside I'm cracking up at the awkwardness of the whole thing. I said something, I forget what, turned around, and went out before I started laughing. She and I broke up not long after, but that guy went on to be my best friend. Years later, I'm retelling the story of how we met and told his girlfriend that story. Turns out he'd been embarrassed about the incident for years. I thought he knew that I'd never been mad, but he didn't and was really relieved. No way. I've never heard a story like that before. I couldn't be friends with someone that was bad-mouthing me to my boy. I really couldn't. So I don't know how you guys turned that around and managed to be friends. Or maybe I'm just a really sensitive soul. But yeah, I just couldn't, I don't think. Like, how would that even come about? How would you talk again after going through something like that? Do you know what I mean? Like, how would you then become friends? That confuses me. Story 9. I'm 12 hours late for this one, but here it is. When I was 17, I was pregnant and planning on giving the baby up for adoption. Everyone knew this and felt it was the right thing and tried to be supportive. At about 8 months, I went to a party and this guy I didn't know was drunk and got really excited that I was going to be a mum. He was gushing about his new baby and how amazing it is and how wonderful it was going to be for me, and how even if it seems scary, it will work out and be the best thing that's ever happened to me. I didn't really say much, and he was mortified the next day when a mutual friend told him that I was 17 and not planning on keeping the baby. It had literally never occurred to me that having a baby could be nice. I was the youngest of 7 and kind of hated babies. That drunken angel was the reason I kept my daughter. She's now 14 and incredibly awesome. And we have not only made it work, we have excelled at life, and I couldn't possibly be happier that someone's awkward gaff changed my entire world forever. Story 10. First semester at college and I'm walking outside to go to ultimate practice. A girl was looking around frantically. She knew my friend and asked if he could help her out. She needed to print out tickets for a Toby Keith concert that she had to leave for in 10 minutes. My friend said no, but I said yes. I'm a very shy, awkward kid who wouldn't think twice about talking to this girl, right? She's blonde and one of the most attractive girls on campus. I said maybe about 2 full sentences the entire time she used it, but apparently that's all I needed to say. A few months later and it's winter break. I liked something on her Facebook and she ended up starting to talk to me. It turns out she's been attracted to me ever since that one day and never spoke up about it until then. We've been dating for about 9 months and every day is the best. Long story short, helped a hot girl who needed to print something, ended up dating a few months later and still going quite strong. Summer, if you're reading this, you the best. Oh guys, that's a really cute story. I want to know if you're still together. If you happen to be listening, please do let me know in the comments because you guys all know I'm a nosy witch. And I want to know what's going on. But yeah, I think that's really, really sweet. There's nothing wrong with being awkward and shy, okay? Because sometimes you get the girl. And you did, so preach, sister. Story 11. I once ruined a surprise wedding shower at the restaurant I worked for. I had no idea that it was a surprise. A bunch of ladies entered claiming that they had a reservation for a wedding shower, and I seated them. Then 2 stragglers came in 10 minutes later asking if a few women had come in earlier. I replied, "Oh, you mean for the wedding shower?" And the one woman gave me death eyes while the other said, "Oh, I guess this is my shower. I didn't know it was a shower. I thought it was for my friend's birthday." My response was to turn bright red and apologise profusely. I then gave them to another server so I wouldn't feel bad the rest of the night. Oh no, there's really nothing worse, is there, than giving away a surprise. I've done it a few times in my life, purely by accident, but it's the worst. Like, you feel awful. You really do. So, I can relate, hun. Story 12. So me and my ex had been broken up for a while, okay? We'd fricked a couple times and were still pretty good friends. So one day she texted me. She seemed pretty fuming, but said she needed to talk to me. So later I get a call from her and she was not happy. Can't remember the exact reason, but she was fuming. So she says she doesn't think we can talk anymore. Blah, blah, drama. Meanwhile, in my head, I'm really confused. Still not sure why she's fuming and she's not about to explain it. At this point, I think, frick it. I'm going to go full diplomat. To this day, I do not remember how I did it, what I said, or how the conversation turned to this, but we ended up with her asking me to have a threesome with her and a female friend she'd met at uni. I need to let my subconscious deal with these things more. Long story short, ex called to fight with me, ended up in a threesome. Story 13. I don't know, mine wasn't exactly awkward, but it was one of those moments that meant more to 2 other people than me. One night my friends went to a pub that does karaoke every Sunday. I was drunk and butchering Yellow by Coldplay when I saw 2 people slow dancing as I sang. I was hitting notes that didn't exist. It was bad. When it finished, I wobbled down from the stage and towards my booth full of buds and booze, when the couple raced over to me to tell me that Yellow was their wedding song. They'd been having a bad night or a fight, something like that, and heard me start to sing this and fell in love all over again. It was really sweet. All I really remember for sure is that the girl said to me, "What a wonderful moment. Thank you." Everyone who was there that night still laughs about it since they know how awful my singing truly was. Oh, we love that though. Because, it obviously did. It meant something so much more to someone else than it did to you. Even if it was awful singing, it probably just triggered memories and love for them, didn't it? We love that. You should probably get on the karaoke again soon and see if you can do that again for another couple. Even if you do sound like a cat being strangled. Story 14. I was spending July 4th, 2009 in a little condo in Steamboat Springs, Colo, with some good friends. Everything about the weekend was shaping up perfectly. Some of the people who paid backed out so everyone got their own bed, and we had more than ample amounts of alcohol and food. The first night we were there, we started playing Circle of Death, King's Cup, Never Have I Ever. We made up our own rules as we always did. One of the cards was, when was the last time? I so happened to draw the card and said, when was the last time you done it? Obviously to brag about the last time I done it that morning with the girl I'd been seeing. I started and the answers went clockwise. The girl sitting to my right said May. Next up was her boyfriend, who took a long pause, looked right at her, and said February. The awkwardness filled the room immediately. Everyone finished their answers haphazardly, and he stood up, walked down the hall, and closed the door to their bedroom for the weekend. She eventually followed. We proceeded to make road drinks and walk up the mountain while the two figured it out. The rest of the weekend was sort of tough and awkward, but now 18 months later, they're one of the happiest couples I know. Ooh, why would you admit that there and then in front of a group of people? That is one way to make someone feel like poo, right? Because, I mean, it's one thing admitting it to your partner, but admitting it to your partner in front of a room of people? Yeah, not a good idea, buddy. Story 15. I was working out of town for the summer when my sister flew into a nearby city for her cousin-in-law's wedding. Since the only time I had to visit with her was right after work, on the night of the event, she and I agreed to meet out in the parking lot, hang out for a little bit, and then go our own ways. Once I arrived, she insisted I come inside and sit down at a table and get something to drink. I blanched at the idea, considering I was in my paint and sawdust-covered stage carpentry clothes. She insisted it would be fine, and pointed out a few of the most casually attired wedding guests to put me at ease. Not 5 feet into the reception hall are we, when I hear this squeal of delight. "Wedding crasher!" cheered the bride. She bounced up to us as, "Oh my god, I have a real wedding crasher!" It was about me, then, that I remembered the Wedding Crashers movie had been released a few short months before. Obviously, she knew I was my sister's twin, what with the resemblance and all, and she was fine with me coming in. The fact I crashed her wedding was just the icing on the cake. So now there are photos in the official wedding album of me and the bride, me and the new couple, my sister and I with the bride, and so on. Every time they see us, I'm joyfully greeted. It's an honour to be their official wedding crasher, but I am still mortified that I let my sister talk me into walking into their wedding, wearing a Say No to Drugs t-shirt and cut-off jeans. Story 16. Me and some guys met some girls on vacation. Hang out with them until 2 days later they ditch us for another group of guys because they have weed. We're generally annoyed. Fast forward another couple days, we're sitting by a campfire in town when another completely different group of guys we've never seen before just randomly sit by the fire with us. We all just mind our own business because it was a public fire by a restaurant and figured they just wanted to stay warm. About 5 minutes later, we start a conversation with them. Turns out they are the brothers of these girls that we met, and the girls we met lied about their age to us. Told us they were 18. They were 14 fricking years old. We tell the brothers they ditched us for weed. The brothers are fuming that their 14-year-old sisters are smoking with some other guys. We all decide to leave the fire together and go to Starbucks. Then bam! There we see the girls leaned up against a wall talking to the guys. All of us proceed past the guys and whisper in their ears, "They're 14 years old." The look on their face I will never forget. One of the most glorious moments of my entire life. Breckenridge, Colorado. No better place. Oh, the classic lying of your age. Now, I've done that a couple times before. And when you're found out, it's actually really embarrassing. But I mean, it is our own fault. Why did we lie? Like, come on, we're just trying to be cool, all right? Let us live. But then they obviously ruined it for them, didn't they? But poor gals. Story 17. A woman I work with had just had a baby and asked me to be said baby's first babysitter. We're pretty tight. Which I had no problem with considering I'm like the Pied Piper with kids. Minus the leading into a cave, of course. So, I'm babysitting an infant and an 8-year-old. No problem. Got this. Put them to bed, decide to watch Archer on their Netflix. Still good. Here's something in the backyard. Being a strong, black-belted, independent woman, I decide to go survey premises. So I go outside, realise it's just the apartment complex behind them. No big deal. Go back to watch Archer. Oh poo, the door's locked. In a blind panic, I ran back and forth between the front and back doors, attempting to open clearly locked barriers whilst vaulting their 6-foot fences. Around the third lap of Freakout, I discover there's a gate and decide to call the parents, out for their first date since spawn. So, fully out of breath, I try one more bright idea of banging on the 8-year-old's window trying to wake her up. No avail, and neighbour dog goes insane. End of story. Parents think it's hilarious and still bring up crying Mosquito sweating me on their front porch, freaking out over being a negligent baby watcher. Also, the 8-year-old may be traumatised by a night where a stranger banged on her window late at night. Who knows? Story 18. Second weekend at Giant College in City as a freshman was incredibly daunting. It was really hard to find friends, and even if you did click with someone in one of the stupid orientation events, our school is so huge that unless you go balls out socially successful penguin and ask them to go to a movie or something with you, 15 minutes after meeting them, you'll probably never see them again. So, I'm thankfully in a class with a girl that I get along with well enough, and late in the week she asked if I want to come to a party at a bar that had been rented out with her that weekend. Thankful to finally have been asked to do something with the prospect of making a real friend, I'm super excited about it. Sounds so lame now, but this college really is freaking huge and I was so overwhelmed. Fast forward to Friday, I meet her at this bar. We have a great night, make some real friend headway. Suddenly it's 3 a.m. and we decide to go home. My dorm is across the city via a really sketchy walk, and being the terrified freshmen that we were, neither of us thought me making that walk alone was a good idea. New friend offers to let me stay in her dorm. Her sweet mate is out for the weekend, so I have a bed to sleep in. We get back to her dorm drunk and tired, and lo and behold, her crazy sweet mate has not only locked the dorm to her room, but zip-tied the doorknob. It's a college dorm, so no couch. New friend awkwardly asked if I want to sleep in her tiny butt bed twin bed with her. Keep in mind we've had at most 4 conversations prior to this night. And I can tell she's hesitant to ask, but also doesn't want to kick me out. I'm unfamiliar with the subway and don't want to walk back alone, so I agree, and we spend the entire night spooning in a tiny twin bed. Wake up the next morning to her roommate, who had barely conversed with her at this point, giving us extremely quizzical glances. 4 years later and about to graduate, we're still living together, and she's become my best friend from college. I guess it's good, or else it would have made a few weird exchanges in the hallway. And the roommate has also become a great friend. See, that's a nice story. I do agree, though, it was always really hard making friends at uni. I feel like when you come from a small town, I always had a really big friendship group. I had all the friends I needed, so I wasn't too interested in making friends in uni. But anyway, even if I was, it's difficult. I don't know why, but I just struggle making new friends. It's actually not a problem for me. If I've had a few drinks and stuff, I'm absolutely fine. But I think when you feel like you've already got all the friends you need, other friends are just kind of a bonus. But yeah, no, it's difficult making friends as you get older because everyone's already got their group. Do you know what I mean? Story 19. One time my friend's grandma died, so we wore all black and tried to look super fancy because we were preteens, I don't know. After the funeral, we went out to dinner at one of those chain restaurants because nothing pairs with crying quite like wordplay-themed appetizers. So we're sitting there and our server comes up and he's bursting with flair and bouncing everywhere and so ready to tell us about the specials that he's just going to explode with compliments. So he does. So girls, you look super nice. Must be headed to a fun time. You're all dressed up. Got a big date? Big dance? Love it. Love dancing. You all look stooped up for a big night. Where's your dates? Going solo? Cute. So cute. Tell me about your big plans. He is foaming with excitement. Here are a bunch of awkwardly dressed up preteens and he's like 20-something and I bet he thinks we think he's so cute and charming. And my mum is probably going to give him a monster tip. But I'm 13 and I fricking hate everybody. So of course, I have to be the one that looks at him, straight in the eyes, in the most deadpan voice I've got and say, "No, we just came from a funeral. Her grandma died." His face dropped so quickly that it was actually painful to watch. It was the most awkward moment I've ever created to date, and I'm an awkward situation maestro. Never before had I witnessed someone actually stumble over their words out of sheer embarrassment. He was so flustered he couldn't get out more than a couple grumbles that sounded a little bit like, sorry, but more like, and then he just turned around and fled. Afterwards, we giggled like the horrible little creatures that we are 13-year-old girls. But it was thigh-frickingly awkward for that guy. Poor waiter. Also, our food was free, so that was awesome. Frick yeah, potato skins. Story 20. I caught my mum cheating on my dad. I knew this girl online and turns out my mum met her dad online and went to go see him. Somehow the girl put 2 and 2 together and messaged me that my mum was there. I realised my mum had been gone for days, not at her aunt's funeral, but with another man. She was always a drama queen and mean-spirited a lot. My mum comes online after I demand to talk to her and tells me that my dad knows. Turns out their marriage was failing and he wanted to see if someone else could make her happy, so supported her decision to find someone new. I go to my dad in tears and ask if they're getting a divorce. He hugs me and says they probably are. My dad is 6'5" or so and about 350 pounds. He was in his tighty whities at the time and suddenly breaks into a dance to the beat of The Heat Is On by Glenn Frey, singing, "The witch is gone! The witch is gone!" The sight of it was so hilarious to me I started laughing through my tears. To this day, whenever I think of my parents' divorce, I think of this somehow funny moment when my dad was being a big goofy frick, dancing around in his underwear singing his parody of The Heat Is On. Well, I mean, it doesn't sound like it went too badly then if you were laughing through the tears, do you know what I mean? I think those situations are difficult, aren't they? Because obviously your parents have they're over it now because they know their marriage is failing, but they haven't actually told the kids. But yeah, I suppose it would have been slightly easier, the fact that your dad knew this was going on, because if he didn't, then I don't think it would have gone down the same way. Story 21. Went to an NFL game and tailgated with a few friends. One friend brought a new girl he'd been seeing, first time I'd met her. I'm drunk and talking to both of them, and I asked them if they're together. Evidently, they had yet to have that conversation, but they ended up having it on the walk into the stadium. I was invited to their wedding 3 years later. Story 22. I was drunk at a party, right, and there's a noise complaint, so everyone leaves. I head back towards my flat, walking with 2 women I'd met at the party. I have a girlfriend. Anyway, one of them mentions they need to use the toilet, and I say, "Oh, I have a toilet at my flat, come on over." We get back to the flat, and one of them wanders into the living room and meets my flatmate. The other goes to the washroom, then comes out and sits down in the living room. I'm thinking to myself, whatever, I wanted to go bed, but I suppose it's socialising time because it'd be rude to kick them out. So we play a drinking game, over the course which I learned they live very far away and it's very late. I recommended to them drunkenly and not very elegantly that they spend the night on the couches. They clearly take this as an attempt to sleep with them, probably due to the drunken, not well thought out way of saying it, which was not my intent, and it gets awkward. They leave and I go to sleep. The girlfriend isn't in town. Still waiting for the story to turn out awesome. Ooh, let me tell you, hun. If you're my boyfriend, and you invited girls back to your house and to stay on the couch, I don't care what kind of intention you had, I am not having it. My head would blow off and fly out the window. Like, woe betide when I get my hands on you, love. That story is never going to turn out awesome, okay? Take it from me. Story 23. I once pooed my pants on vacation. We ate some strange food in Brazil, and long story short, I pooed my pants through my shorts and into my socks while getting ready to go out. The weird thing is, I didn't even feel sick. I think it was just some kind of fish that I couldn't digest the oil. This may sound unremarkable, but it was one of those ones where you fart and poo comes out. However, usually you know when poo accidentally comes out. This one, I honestly thought I just farted and then felt warm liquid running down my leg into my sock. This might sound funny, but it's the most terrifying thing to have happen to you. For the rest of the trip, every time I farted, I had a shred of doubt in my mind. To this day, I still have that thought in the back of my mind. I tell this story and people think it's so funny, but it's one of my biggest fears. Story 24. This isn't about me, but I was there. My boyfriend and I were at an event and we see our friend there. She was in an open relationship with a really close friend of my boyfriend. After the event, my boyfriend took a photo of her making out with some dude and sent it to a friend's brother, who eventually sent it to the friend. My boyfriend kept talking about it as if the girl cheated, but I kept saying she didn't because that's what an open relationship is. When the friend saw the picture, he had a long talk with the girl and they decided to become an official couple. Neither of them were mad at my boyfriend, but I wonder if they realised that my boyfriend was the one who truly brought them together. Okay, gang, what's everyone's opinions on an open relationship? Because I'm telling you now, it's not for me. Like, if I like you, I want you to be mine and only mine. Like, there's no sharing here. I don't care if Sharon's caring. For me, it is not. Story 25. When I was in college, we used to play a drinking game called the Buffalo Club. You weren't allowed to ever drink with your glass, bottle, or pitcher in your right hand. If you were drinking with your right hand and were caught, any of the other members of the Buffalo Club would shout "Buffalo" at you, and you had to chug the remainder of whatever you were drinking on the spot. The way you recruited new members was to just randomly ask the person if you could borrow a nickel, since most people, even broke college students, will readily loan you 5 cents they usually hand it over. Then you inform them that, like it or not, they just paid their dues and are now members of the Buffalo Club. The year after I left school, I returned to party with some friends that were a year younger than me. There was a new girl there sitting around the table and she kept drinking with her right hand. I knew my friends and was absolutely sure that she had to be in the club if she was one of their drinking buddies now. I waited until the next time she took a drink and pointed at her and shouted, "Buffalo!" My friend sitting next to me immediately leaned over and whispered pointedly, "She doesn't have a left hand." After that, I noticed that she always kept her left hand, or should I say her left wrist stump, tucked in her pocket or under her shirt. I was horrified, but she either didn't hear me, didn't understand, or played it off like it was no big deal. Story 26. I have a rule to never ever bring up a pregnancy unless a woman talks about it first. There were a few embarrassing incidents with women just being chubby, but the worst one to cause the self-imposed rule happened about 10 years ago. I worked in a drugstore and a guy I knew came in all excited getting prenatal vitamins and told me about how long they'd been trying, how excited his wife and their families were, yada yada. The next day I saw his wife in the store, so I went up and congratulated her, telling her how happy I was for them. She looked at me and started crying and told me, "I lost this one too." I felt about 2 inches tall. Hang around me when you are obviously pregnant. That fact will remain the elephant in the room unless you start talking about it. Oh, that is a rough one. But back onto the point about, congratulating women without knowing, I would just never do that. never do that. Like, it's not really any of our business, is it? I mean, it's probably coming from a nice place, but then if it backfires on you like that, it's never going to end well. Like, that could also be really insulting for someone trying to lose weight as well. So I would just never mention it at all. I'm with this guy. Story 27. I wound up interrupting a threesome on my way home from work. They were in the next car to mine with one of their windows open so I could hear everything that was going on. As I open my door, the girl freaks out and gets everyone to stop for a second. I get in my car, one of the guys pops out and gives me a nervous smile. I told him it's all cool. Then I went home and applied eye bleach. Later that week, I was working until closing and had a party of 8 come in for a reservation. One of them recognised me as that guy who made things really awkward. They ended up buying me dessert at work, which was pretty nice of them. Long story short, watch Threesome, get cake. Story 28. I was invited to a graduation party for this girl who was in my class in high school, and there were tons of people there. Her parents were really chill and always seemed to like me. It probably helped that I dated her sister a year or two back, and because I spent a bunch of time at their house during the summer. Anyways, back on track, everyone was swimming, playing volleyball, generally chatting it up, and toking in the pool house, when me, under the influence of teenage hunger, goes inside. I see a poo ton of food that people were munching on. Appetizers, soda, chips, pretty much everything. The one thing that stuck out to me, however, was the prized graduation pizza. I took a slice while everyone was outside. Hey, why not? And it was amazing. I promptly loaded my plate and went outside to tell everyone that pizza was ready. I opened the door and yelled for everyone to listen to me. I told them I just had a pizza. No ordinary pizza, but a pizza filled with fricking anchovies. Lo and behold, her mum walks into me and tells me that they were saving the pizza for after the appetizers. I immediately told her to excuse me as this made me feel uneasy. I went to the bathroom and lo and behold, my stomach does not agree with anchovies. I start throwing up again and again and used just about the whole toilet roll to clean up after myself. When I went to flush, the toilet got clogged. So I opened the back of the toilet and what's inside? A fricking brick of weed. Long story short, no ordinary sandwich. Well, I mean, you could say that's bad karma that your stomach couldn't cope with the anchovies, right? Although I wouldn't say that's too much of a big deal. Like, wow, they were saving the pizza and you had a slice. Like, what's wrong with that, really? Come on. But the brick of weed's a bit random. Like, what on earth is that doing there? Someone tell me. Story 29. So I have this friend, John, who is in a friends with benefits situation with a girl, Jane. We'd never met Jane, but they knew each other since they used to go to camp together, and also we all attended the same college. Well, after we graduated, their situation remained the same. John would hang out and he wouldn't shut up about Jane. Every story was about Jane. After a while, we finally met Jane at this bar. I was hammered and was trying to talk to Jane to get to know her. Somehow it slipped out that he wouldn't shut up about her, and I used the phrase, "You're the one." The next day, Jane gave John an ultimatum. Either they were going to be together officially or she was leaving. John said he liked what they had going on and didn't want to be exclusive, so he bailed. Jane ended up dating some guy for a year and almost got married, but she knew she wanted to be with John. John fooled around with a bunch of girls, but he knew he wanted to be with Jane. Eventually, they found their way back to one another 1.5 years later and got engaged almost immediately. They've been married for 2 years and have a beautiful baby boy. I like to think I had a hand in their coming together, despite me fricking up my boy's good situation he had going. Classic boys and their commitment issues, hey? Just do it. Do you know what I mean? Just do it. You got nothing to lose. And look, you might end up with a beautiful baby boy and so in love that you could pop. So you heard it here first, boys. Just do it. Story 30. I have 3 kids and all of them were induced. When my second was born, we were leaving for the hospital at 4:30 a.m. while it was still dark. We let our German Shepherd out to do her business before we left, since we would be gone all day. While we were outside, she ran up to an animal that we thought was our cat. Turns out it was a skunk, and she got sprayed. She then proceeds to freak out, run between us, wiping the skunk spray on us in the process, and run back into the house. Her crate was in the very back of the house, and she managed to wipe the spray on everything between the front door and her crate. It was too late for us to try clean ourselves up since we were supposed to be at the hospital by 5 a.m. When we get to the hospital, needless to say, we stank. We explained the situation to everyone who gave us a strange look, and no one could help but giggle about it. The nurses were hooking me up to the IVs and monitors were laughing by the time we were settled in. Over the next few hours, we had every nurse in the maternity ward coming in and out of our room, wanting to hear the story. It had become quite the rumour. They all said it made their shift an interesting one. Story 31. I'll make this as short as possible. My girlfriend and I were at a wedding this past weekend. Great wedding, met some great people, ate and drank a whole lot. The after party was at a casino where we proceeded to have a couple more drinks. It was at this time my girlfriend decides it would be a good idea to gamble. I ask her if she's sure because we may not be thinking strategically after all the bourbon and champagne. She said, "Yeah, babe, I used to go to Vegas a few times a year when I lived in LA. I can play Jack Black." I know. No problem. "Give me $100. So I give her $100. I figure she'll find a lower limit table and take her time, but no. She wants to do this quick and dirty like some kind of drive-by. I'm not much of a gambler, so I figure she knows what she's doing. She sits down at the blackjack table and places a bet. The dealer deals and she's got 3 cards. She says, "Excuse me, am I almost seeing double or do I have 3 cards?" The dealer says, "You're at a poker table. Blackjack is that way." She turns around and looks at me with a smirk I'll never forget and proceeds to play the hand and wins close to $400. We're still not exactly sure. And we got the F out of there before we could decide to blow it on roulette or something stupid. I have no doubt that there were a couple of people at that table that night thought we were running some kind of hustle. Then we done it. Story 32. Went to a party which quickly got boring. Me and my friend were messing about hitting each other. This quickly escalated into a full fight. Not serious, it was common for our friendship. Then this girl comes over asking to join in. We let her fight me, thinking it will just be a bit of a mess about. Instead, she runs straight for me and starts trying to claw my face off. I told her off asking for help as the girl has gone absolutely mental. She runs at me again, so I pick her up and put her to the floor to subdue her. Turns out she hit the floor a little harder than expected, and I've chipped her front tooth. I then think that some guys are going to go full white knight on me and beat my butt. She gets up screaming, crying, blood pouring from her mouth, and attacks me some more. She's screaming, "Get away from me!" while repeatedly slapping me in the face, and she rips me shirt almost clean off. After this fiasco has died down and people have helped, me and my friend decide we should leave as we've caused a poo storm. We get told it's fine, but we insist that we should go. The girl whose tooth I chipped proceeds to come up to me, apologise and ask for my number. You and your friends were messing about hitting each other. I don't think that sounds too fun. I used to hate it right when my boyfriends would start fight, like my boys as in my friends as boys. I don't have like 80 boyfriends. Wish I did though. No, I'm joking. Yeah, when they used to play fight, it was never a play fight. It always turned into a fully pledged fight, like proper scrapping. Like, there's no fun in pretending to fight, okay? Because it never works out. You will always get hurt and probably fall out. Story 33. A couple days ago, I was sitting in my language arts class, doing an analysis of this passage. To pass the time, I texted my friend. I'm bored. A few minutes later, I look up and see my teacher grinning at me. She says to me, "You do realise who you sent that to, right?" I was so confused because I thought I sent it to my friend, but then I realised I had misdialed and sent the text to my language arts teacher. Thankfully, she just laughed it off. The next day in physics, I received a text message from her saying, "Are you bored?" Me being the sassy man that I am and being well aware that she has a class, I replied, "Shouldn't you be teaching right now?" I got a lot of high fives for that, and the best part is that I'm not in trouble for anything. First things first, why do you have your teacher's number? That's kind of strange to me. Also, why is she texting you? I think she wants a bit. I can't lie. It's what it sounds like. I would not have my teacher's numbers. Sorry, but I just wouldn't. Thanks for watching. Like and subscribe for more videos coming daily.